The advancement of an army on the battlefield is a daunting task, especially when it comes to transporting heavy ammunition, artillery systems, food, and weapon stocks. To overcome this challenge, an army must have access to reliable railroads and sea routes. In recent days, Russia has lost control over both of these crucial logistical channels, which will have a direct impact on the course of the war. The Russian army was already facing difficulties in the war, but with the loss of control over the railroads and sea routes, it is now much more challenging for them to move their troops further into Ukraine. This gives the Ukrainian army a significant advantage. The Ukrainian army has been fighting for a long time to gain the upper hand in the conflict, and their struggle has been successful. But how did this happen? To understand this, we must take a closer look at the map of Ukraine. Ukraine has an extensive railroad network, particularly in the areas occupied by Russia. One city in particular, Kupiansk, is of critical importance. Kupiansk is located in the Carpathian region, just 50 kilometers from Russia. When the Russian army invaded Ukraine, they used the railway systems in the city to transport their military ammunition further into the country. The story of Kupiansk during the war is particularly interesting. When the Russian army approached the city, they tried an unusual tactic. Russian commanders asked to meet with the mayor of Kupiansk, Gennady Matsugura. During this meeting, they asked him to surrender the city without a fight, promising that there would be no clashes in the city and that civilians would not be harmed. The mayor accepted this offer from the Russian army, but after the city was captured, the Russian soldiers began to behave differently. They committed many crimes in the city, disrupting the order of the city. There were even problems with the supply of food products, such as bread. Meanwhile, the citizens of Kupiansk were following the news of the Ukrainian army's resistance against Russia. They also decided to resist the occupation. The citizens of Kupiansk realized that Russian soldiers were stealing grain and other agricultural products from their town. Dozens of sacks of grain were carried away on the railroad tracks. When these images spread around the city, the citizens became even more angry. A local politician and activist named Mykola decided to organize the citizens of Kupiansk to protest against the occupation. Russian soldiers intervened in these protests, and they opened fire on the protesters. Mykola was detained at the same time, and since then, no one has been able to reach him. After these protests, Russian commanders were in a panic, fearing that the protests in Kupiansk would spread to other cities. The protesters started to tell their experiences by connecting to Ukrainian news channels. In response, Russian troops intervened in the city's infrastructure systems and cut the connections to Ukrainian television channels. However, this could not stop the Kupiansk citizens' struggle for independence. The story of Kupiansk illustrates the importance of railroads and sea routes in the advancement of an army on the battlefield. It also shows the resilience and determination of the citizens of Kupiansk in the face of occupation and the sacrifices they made to resist it. The loss of control over these logistical channels by Russia directly impacted the course of the war and gave the Ukrainian army a significant advantage. The story of Kupiansk is a reminder of the human cost of war and the power of resistance. Kupiansk had always been a source of pride for the Ukrainian people. However, when Russia began its occupation of Ukraine, Kupiansk became a battleground. Dmytro, a brave citizen of Kupiansk, rose up against the Russian army and was subsequently captured and tortured. But Dmytro, through sheer determination and luck, managed to escape and flee the city. The Russian government attempted to quell the resistance in Kupiansk by distributing Russian passports to the citizens and flooding the city with propaganda. But the people of Kupiansk refused to give up their dream of independence. The Ukrainian government closely watched the situation in Kupiansk, but a major operation to liberate the city could not be carried out due to the progress of the Russian army. However, the Ukrainian army eventually gained ground and pushed back the Russian occupation in many areas, finally reaching Kupiansk. The Ukrainian army launched a comprehensive operation, bombarding the Russian troops with missiles and successfully liberating the city. Ukrainian soldiers reached the city square, where they celebrated their hard-won victory. The railway stations and the city of Kupiansk were also regained by the Ukrainian army, greatly limiting the Russian army's ability to use the railroad. But the railway system was not the only reason for the Ukrainian soldiers' joy. The Oskar River, which starts in Russia and runs through Ukraine, was also a crucial factor in the war. The Russian army had used the river to transport military ammunition and had considered it a safe haven for their troops, as tanks could not easily cross the river. But after liberating Kupiansk, the Ukrainian army managed to cross the river and push the Russian soldiers back to the east bank. Russia had desperately wanted to keep control of Kupiansk in order to continue its occupation of Ukraine, but the Ukrainian army successfully defended the city against repeated Russian attacks. The liberation of Kupiansk also opened up the opportunity for the Ukrainian army to liberate the Luhansk region and destroy the warehouses of the Russian army. The people of Kupiansk had never given up hope, and through the bravery and determination of citizens like Dmytro and the Ukrainian army, the city was finally freed. The city of Kupiansk is currently at the forefront of the ongoing war, with its strategic importance being paramount. The actions of the Ukrainian army from this city have the potential to significantly alter the trajectory of the conflict. The entire world is closely monitoring developments in Kupiansk, as the outcome of the battle here could have far-reaching consequences.